The giant alien spaceship floated high above Earth. It was dark and silent, hiding in the shadows of space. Inside the ship, Commander Vexnar looked at the glowing blue planet below. His team had visited many worlds before, but this one seemed different. Vexnar was the leader of a survey team. His job was to study new planets and report back to his empire. The Zalthari Empire was powerful and controlled many worlds across the galaxy. They were always looking for new planets to add to their collection. His sensor officer, Krelix, sat at his control station. He was running scans of the planet below. The ship's powerful sensors could see through clouds and buildings. They could detect metal, energy, and even count how many people lived on the planet. Krelix was very good at his job. He had done this hundreds of times before. He would scan a planet, count the population, check their technology level, and make a report. It was usually boring work. Most planets had nothing special about them, but today something strange was happening. The scans showed that humans lived on this planet called Earth. They had built cities and roads. They had invented cars and airplanes. They even had computers and satellites. The technology was not very advanced compared to the Zalthari, but it was not bad for such a young civilization. The planet was divided into many countries. Each country had its own government and laws. This was normal. Many young civilizations were divided like this. Usually the Zalthari would contact the strongest country first and make them join the empire. The other countries would follow soon after. Krelix focused his scans on military bases. Every planet had armies and weapons. The Zalthari needed to know how strong the human military was. If humans had powerful weapons, the Zalthari would need more ships for the takeover. If humans were weak, just a few ships would be enough. The military scan results were normal. Humans had tanks, jets, and missiles. They even had nuclear weapons, though not very many. The Zalthari had faced nuclear weapons before. Their shields could protect them easily. Nothing to worry about. Then Krelix decided to scan the civilian population. This was standard procedure. He wanted to see where people lived, how they moved around, and what they did every day. This information helped the Empire plan how to control the planet after takeover. That was when things got weird. In a city called Houston, the scanners detected a man named Kyle. He was walking into a store that sold camping equipment. Kyle worked with computers. He was just a regular person, not a soldier. But the scanner showed something unexpected. Kyle was carrying a weapon. A real weapon hidden under his jacket. Krelix frowned. Maybe Kyle was a police officer in his free time. That would make sense. But when he checked Kyle's records, he found that Kyle was just a normal civilian. He had never been in the military or police force. Krelix decided to check more people. Maybe Kyle was unusual. But Kyle was not unusual at all. The scanners found Lisa, a woman who taught children at a school. She had a small weapon in her purse while she shopped for food. They found Greg, who worked with numbers and money. He had several rifles locked in a cabinet in his garage. Katie worked at a coffee shop and kept a weapon in her car. The pattern continued everywhere. In the cities, in the suburbs, in the countryside. Teachers, doctors, farmers, store owners, factory workers. Regular people doing regular jobs. And so many of them had weapons. Krelix ran the numbers through his computer. The results came back. He stared at the screen, not believing what he saw. He ran the scan again. The same results appeared. In just one country, there were over 400 million privately owned weapons. The population was only 330 million people. That meant there were more weapons than people. And these were not simple hunting tools. These were real weapons, the kind that soldiers used in wars. Krelix felt his blood turn cold. He had scanned 47 planets before this one. Never, not once, had he seen anything like this. On other planets, only the military and police had weapons. Sometimes rich people had a few weapons for hunting animals. But never had he seen an entire population armed like this. He expanded his scan to other countries. Australia, Canada, Finland, Switzerland, and many others also had armed civilians. Not as many as the first country, but still a significant number. Some countries had very strict weapon laws, but even in those places, some people had weapons. But this one country, the United States of America, was different from all the others. It had more civilian weapons than the next 25 countries combined. It was like the entire population was ready for war at any moment. Krelix stood up from his station. His legs felt weak. He walked over to Commander Vexnar, who was looking at star charts and planning the next phase of their mission. The commander, Krellick said quietly. His voice was shaking a little. I think you need to see this. Right now. Vexnar turned around. He saw the worried look on Krellick's face. In all their years working together, he had never seen his officer look scared. Something was very wrong. Show me, Vexnar commanded. Krellick brought up the scan results on the main display. The holographic image of Earth appeared, floating in the air. Tiny lights covered the planet like stars in the night sky. Each light represented a weapon signature. Vexnar stared at the display. There were so many lights that some parts of the planet glowed bright. He had never seen anything like it. For a long moment he said nothing. He just stood there trying to understand what he was seeing. Finally he spoke. This cannot be right. Run a full diagnostic on all sensors. Check for errors. Check for interference from their military systems. This has to be wrong. Krellick nodded. I already did that, Commander. 3 times. The sensors are working perfectly. There is no error. What you are seeing is real. The humans are armed. All of them. Commander Vexnar walked slowly to the sensor station. His mind was racing. What Krellick was showing him made no sense. He placed his hand on the console and stared at the rotating image of Earth. Millions of tiny lights blinked across the surface of the planet. Explain everything, Vexnar said. He tried to keep his voice calm, but inside he felt confused and worried. Krellick touched the controls. The image zoomed into different cities and towns. Commander, we found their military bases first. That was normal. Tanks, aircraft, missiles, nuclear weapons. Standard defensive systems for a planet at this level of development. Nothing unusual. He paused and changed the display. But then I scanned the civilian population. That is when we found the problem. Or maybe it is not a problem. I do not know what to call it. But look at these numbers. The display showed statistics. Numbers scrolled past showing weapon counts, ammunition supplies, and population data. In the United States alone, civilians owned over 400 million weapons. The population was 330 million. That meant 1.2 weapons per person, including children and elderly people. Vexnar felt dizzy. This is impossible. Recalibrate the sensors. There must be an error. Perhaps their military is storing weapons in civilian areas. That would explain the readings. I thought the same thing, Krellick replied. So I did individual scans. I tracked specific weapons to specific people. These are not military stockpiles hidden in towns. These are personal weapons owned by individual citizens. Teachers own them. Doctors own them. Farmers, shopkeepers, office workers, everyone. And it is legal. Their laws allow it. Another officer approached. It was Dalvara, the science officer. She had been listening to the conversation. I have been studying their society and biology, she said. The weapons are distributed across all groups. Men and women both own weapons. Young people and old people. Rich and poor. People in cities and people in the countryside. There is no pattern except that many humans are armed. Vexnar looked at the data again. His training had prepared him for many situations. Hostile aliens, primitive civilizations, advanced technology. But this was something entirely new. A planet where the regular population was armed like an army. What kind of weapons are we talking about, he asked. Are these simple tools for hunting animals, or something more serious? Krellick brought up detailed scans. These are chemical propellant projectile weapons, Commander. Some are small handguns that can be hidden easily. Others are large rifles with significant power. Many are semi-automatic, meaning they can fire repeatedly without reloading. Some are fully automatic, like military weapons. We are also detecting large amounts of ammunition stored in homes, vehicles, and businesses. Dalvara added more information. I found training facilities where civilians practice shooting these weapons regularly. It appears to be a hobby for many humans. They compete in shooting contests. They teach their children how to use weapons safely. There are thousands of businesses that sell weapons and ammunition to anyone who qualifies under their laws. She pulled up images from Earth's internet. Look at this. They call them gun stores. These shops sell weapons the way other shops sell food or clothing. Some stores have hundreds of weapons on display. People walk in, choose a weapon, complete some paperwork, and walk out with it the same day. Vexnar watched videos of humans at shooting ranges. They looked relaxed and happy. This was not military training. This was recreation. People were having fun while learning to use deadly weapons. Why? Vexnar whispered. Why would a civilization do this? What are they afraid of? Are they expecting an invasion? Are they at war with each other? Delvara shook her head. No, Commander. Most of these people live in peaceful areas. The man named Kyle, who we first detected, lives in a suburb with very little crime. The woman Lisa teaches at a school in a safe neighborhood. They are not living in war zones. They are not afraid of immediate danger. This is something deeper in their culture. Krelix added another detail. I have been analyzing their infrastructure. They manufacture millions of these weapons every year. They also produce billions of rounds of ammunition. The factories are spread across the country. If they needed to, they could increase production quickly. They have the raw materials, the knowledge, and the facilities. Vexnar paced back and forth. Every planet they had surveyed followed a pattern. The government controlled weapons. The military had most of the firepower. Civilians were weak and easy to control. Take out the military leadership, and the planet would surrender. But Earth broke that pattern completely. If the Zalthari attacked Earth, they would not just face the military. They would face millions of armed civilians. Every town, every neighborhood, every street could become a battlefield. Even if the Zalthari destroyed the military in the first attack, the civilians could continue fighting for years. Show me their history, Vexnar ordered. Have they always been like this? Delvara pulled up historical records. The United States was founded after a revolution. Civilians with personal weapons fought against a powerful empire and won. That experience shaped their entire culture. They wrote laws protecting the right to own weapons. They passed these laws down through generations. For them, weapons represent freedom and independence. She showed more examples. When their government tried to take away certain types of weapons, millions of people protested. When foreign armies invaded other countries, American civilians sent weapons and supplies to help the resistance. They believed deeply that an armed population cannot be enslaved. Vexnar stopped pacing. He looked at his officers. We need to call a full meeting, get everyone together. The military commander, the cultural specialist, everyone. We need to figure out what this means for our mission. As his officers left to gather the team, Vexnar looked at Earth one more time. The planet looked so peaceful from space. Blue oceans, white clouds, Greenland. It was beautiful. But now he knew the truth. Beneath that peaceful surface, hundreds of millions of humans were armed and ready to defend their home. For the first time in his career, Vexnar felt uncertain about what to do next. The Empire expected him to classify Earth and recommend next steps. Should they make peaceful contact? Should they prepare for conquest? Should they just leave and find an easier target? He had to make the right decision. The Empire had conquered 47 worlds. They had never lost a war, but they had never faced a planet like Earth before. Delvara returned to the bridge. Commander, there is one more thing you should know. I found their motto, the unofficial saying that many Americans believe. She displayed the words on the screen. The words were simple but powerful. Come and take it. It was a challenge, an invitation, a warning. Throughout human history, whenever someone tried to take away their weapons, the response was always the same. Come and take it. Try if you dare. We will not give them up willingly. Vexnar understood now. Earth was not just a planet with weapons. It was a planet with a warrior culture hidden beneath a peaceful surface. Every human was potentially a soldier. Every home was potentially a fortress. Every civilian was potentially a fighter. The meeting was about to begin. Vexnar took a deep breath and walked toward the conference room. He had a lot to discuss with his team. The conference room was filled with senior officers. Commander Vexnar sat at the head of the table. Around him were his most trusted advisors. Krelix from Sensors, Delvara from Sciences, Thornax, the military commander with his bright red scales, Sylvana, who studied alien cultures. All of them looked worried. The holographic image of Earth floated above the center of the table. Those tiny lights representing weapons still covered much of the planet. Everyone in the room had seen the data. Everyone understood the problem. Vexnar began the meeting. I have studied the scans many times. The numbers are clear, but I still do not understand why. Why would these humans arm their entire population? What threat makes this necessary? Thornax spoke first. He was old and experienced. He had fought in many wars for the Empire. Commander, I have helped conquer 347 worlds. I have seen many types of civilizations, but I have never seen armed civilians except in two situations. Either the planet is in the middle of a civil war, or they are being invaded by enemies. Is Earth at war? Delvara answered. No, there are some small regional conflicts, yes. Some countries have disagreements. But there is no global war, no planet-wide crisis. In fact, many of the armed civilians we detected live in the safest, most peaceful areas. One man named Brandon lives in Montana. He owns 17 different weapons, but his town has almost no crime. He is a veterinarian who treats animals. Why does a peaceful animal doctor need 17 weapons? Another example, she continued. A woman named Amy in Vermont works at a library. She reads books and helps people find information. She lives in a quiet town with friendly neighbors. Yet she owns weapons and practices shooting every week. These are not soldiers. These are regular people living regular lives. Thornax looked confused. Then what is the point? Why prepare for war if there is no war? Silena, the cultural expert, had been studying human history and philosophy. She spoke carefully. I believe I have found the answer, though it is difficult for us to understand. These humans, especially the Americans, have a very different way of thinking about weapons and freedom. She brought up documents on the display. When the United States was created, they wrote something called the Bill of Rights. These were laws that protected individual freedoms. One of these rights was the right to keep and bear arms. That means the right to own and carry weapons. This right is considered as important as freedom of speech or freedom of religion. Vexnar interrupted. But why? Why make it a fundamental right? Silena explained. Their founders believed that power corrupts. They did not trust any government, even their own. They believed that if citizens were armed, the government could never become too powerful. The people would always have the ability to resist tyranny. It is a check and balance against abuse of power. She showed more examples. Throughout their history, Americans have seen what happens when governments disarm their people. They have watched other countries where only the military and police had weapons. They saw how those governments could abuse citizens without fear. So Americans decided to do things differently. They armed themselves. But that sounds like they do not trust their own leaders, Vexnar said. Exactly, Silena replied. They have a saying, trust but verify. Another saying is that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. They believe freedom must be actively protected, not just assumed. And weapons are part of that protection. Thornax laughed. It was not a happy laugh. Philosophy is all well and good, but it does not stop plasma weapons. Our technology is far superior to theirs. Our shields can stop their bullets. Our armor is nearly impenetrable. If we wanted to take this planet, their small weapons would not stop us. Krelix, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Military commander, I must disagree. I have been studying human military history. These humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. They are very experienced at combat. More importantly, they are experts at asymmetric warfare. What does that mean? Vexnar asked. Krelix brought up historical battle records. Asymmetric warfare means fighting a stronger enemy using unconventional tactics. Humans have done this successfully many times. In a place called Vietnam, a technologically advanced superpower tried to conquer a smaller, less advanced nation. The superpower had jets, helicopters, and superior weapons. But they lost. The local population used guerrilla tactics, ambushes, and home field advantage. They made occupation impossible. He showed more examples. In Afghanistan, 2 different superpowers tried to control the country. Both failed. The local population had fewer weapons and older technology, but they knew the terrain. They were patient. They were willing to fight for years or even decades. Eventually, both superpowers gave up and left. But those were armies fighting in specific regions, Thornax argued. We could avoid those tactics with proper planning. Krelix shook his head. Military commander, you are missing the point. Those resistance movements had maybe a few million fighters spread across small countries. Now imagine 330 million potential fighters spread across an entire continent. Imagine weapons in every town, every neighborhood, every building. How do you occupy that? How do you control that? The room went quiet. Everyone was thinking about what Krelix had said. Occupying a planet usually meant controlling key cities and resources. Send troops to the capital, take over the government, and the rest of the population would follow. But on Earth, that strategy would not work. Even if the Zalthari captured every major city, millions of armed Americans would still be out there. In small towns, in rural areas, in the mountains and forests, fighting back, making life difficult for the occupiers. Delvara added one more important point. We also need to consider their manufacturing capability. I found the factories where they make weapons. These factories can produce millions of weapons and billions of bullets every year. If we attacked, they could shift their entire economy to war production just like they did in their Second World War. They could arm even more people, she continued. Also, information about weapon making is freely available on their internet. Videos, guides, blueprints. If the factories were destroyed, individuals could make weapons in their garages and workshops. They have the knowledge, the tools, and the motivation. Thornax looked at the display showing Earth. His confident expression was gone. He looked troubled now. So what you are saying is that even though we have better technology, we cannot win? Krelix answered carefully. Not exactly. We could win battles. We could destroy their military in days, maybe hours. But winning battles is not the same as winning a war. To truly conquer Earth, we would need to occupy it, control it, make the population submit. And I do not think that is possible with 330 million armed civilians who believe freedom is worth dying for. Vexnar looked around the table. Every officer looked worried now. Even Thornax, who had conquered dozens of worlds, seemed uncertain. I will send a report to the High Command, Vexnar said finally. I will recommend that we approach Earth with caution. Perhaps peaceful trade instead of conquest. These humans might make better allies than subjects. He looked at Earth one more time. The beautiful blue planet that held such a dangerous population. We came here expecting to find another weak civilization. Instead, we found something completely different. A planet where every citizen is a potential soldier. Where the idea of freedom is so strong that millions are willing to fight and die for it. The meeting ended. The officers left to continue their work. But everyone knew that Earth had changed everything. The Empire would have to rethink its strategies. Because one thing was clear. Conquering Earth would be nothing like conquering other worlds. 3 days passed. Commander Vexnar spent those days writing his report to the Zalthari High Command. He explained everything. The weapon counts. The cultural attitudes. The military history. He recommended extreme caution. He suggested peaceful contact instead of conquest. But the High Command did not listen. They sent Fleet Commander Zorthak with 3 more warships. Zorthak was famous in the Empire. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He was decorated with medals and honors. He was old, experienced, and confident. Too confident, Vexnar thought. When Zorthak arrived, his ships dwarfed Vexnar's survey vessel. They were massive war machines, bristling with weapons and shields. The message was clear. The Empire was not here to negotiate. They were here to take control. Zorthak called a meeting. His voice was harsh and impatient. Commander Vexnar, I have read your report. Your concerns are noted. However, the High Command believes you are being too cautious. Yes, the humans have small arms. But we have shields, armor, and orbital superiority. Their weapons cannot harm us. We will proceed with standard first contact protocols. Vexnar tried to argue. Fleet Commander, I strongly advise against aggressive action. These humans are different. They will not simply surrender. Their entire culture is built around resistance to foreign control. Zorthak waved his hand dismissively. Every primitive culture thinks they are special. But technology always wins. We have it, they do not. End of discussion. We land tomorrow in a remote area. We demonstrate our power. We make our demands. They will comply just like all the others did. The landing site was chosen. A desert area in Nevada, far from big cities. The plan was simple. Land peacefully but with a show of force. Explain that Earth was joining the Empire. Give humans no choice but to accept. It had worked 47 times before. What the Zalthari did not understand was how fast information spread on Earth. The moment their ships entered the atmosphere, satellites detected them. Military radar tracked them. And within seconds, the news was everywhere. People with phones started recording video. Social media exploded with posts and photos. News channels interrupted their normal programs to show the alien ships descending. The internet went crazy. Some people were excited. Some were scared. But everyone knew something big was happening. In Nevada, a rancher named Jake saw the ships landing on his phone. He lived about 30 miles from the landing site. Jake did what many Americans would do in that situation. He grabbed his rifle, got in his truck, and drove toward the aliens. He wanted to see what was happening, but Jake was not alone. Ryan, a former Marine who now owned a construction company, saw the news too. He packed his gear and headed out. Nicole and her husband loaded their hunting rifles into their car. Two brothers, Steve and Danny, who owned a gun store, brought extra ammunition for anyone who needed it. Beth, who worked as a nurse, brought her concealed carry pistol and medical supplies. Laura, a mechanic, brought her AR-15. Within an hour, a convoy of trucks was driving toward the landing site. Some people came alone. Some came in groups. They communicated through cell phones and social media, coordinating their movements. None of them thought their weapons could damage alien spaceships. But they also were not going to let unknown visitors land on American soil without someone watching. By the time the alien ships touched down in the desert, hundreds of armed civilians had already established a loose perimeter around the area. They stayed at a distance, keeping the ships in sight but not approaching too close. Local police arrived. National Guard units were mobilizing, but the civilians had gotten there first. Inside the flagship, Zorthak was reviewing the landing protocols. He would lead a delegation of 20 soldiers down to the surface. They would wear ceremonial armor and carry translation devices. It was meant to look impressive and peaceful at the same time. Vexnar was required to accompany the delegation. He did not want to go, but he had no choice. As they prepared to leave the ship, he felt a deep sense of dread. Something bad was going to happen. He could feel it. The landing ramp lowered. Bright desert sunlight flooded into the ship. Zorthak led the way, his armor gleaming. Behind him came the soldiers in perfect formation. Their energy shields hummed softly, ready to activate at any sign of danger. They stepped out into the Nevada desert and stopped. Instead of empty desert or frightened primitives, they saw organized groups of humans. Trucks and cars were parked in rough semicircles around the landing area. People stood near their vehicles, most of them holding rifles. The weapons were pointed down, not aimed at the aliens, but the message was clear. We are here. We are watching. We are armed. Zorthak stopped walking. His confident expression faltered. This was not what he expected. Where was the awe? Where was the fear? These humans looked calm. Some even looked annoyed, as if the aliens were interrupting their day. The fleet commander recovered his composure. He ordered his soldiers to establish a security zone. The Zalthari warriors activated their energy shields and began advancing in formation. The shields shimmered in the sunlight, providing protection from any primitive weapons. But the humans did not retreat. They stood their ground. Some adjusted their stance. Others shifted their rifles to a more ready position, though still not aiming. The movement was subtle but coordinated. These people knew what they were doing. Vexnar moved close to Zorthak. Fleet Commander, please reconsider this approach. These humans will not respond well to aggressive displays. Zorthak ignored him. He activated his translation device and spoke loudly. People of Earth, we represent the Zalthari Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our civilization. This is a great honor. We offer you technology and protection. In return, we expect your cooperation and resources. Your leaders must present themselves for negotiation immediately. There was a moment of silence. Then someone in the crowd shouted back. It was Jake, the rancher. His voice was loud and clear. Selected? Nobody asked us if we wanted to be selected. And integration sounds a lot like you are trying to take over. That is not how things work here, buddy. Murmurs of agreement spread through the crowd. People nodded. Some laughed. The translation device struggled with the casual language, but it captured the defiant tone perfectly. Zorthak's crest flared in irritation. He was not used to being questioned, especially not by primitive natives. You do not understand your situation. This is not a negotiation. Compliance is mandatory. We have conquered 47 worlds before yours. You have no weapons that can harm us. Your only logical choice is to surrender peacefully. Ryan, the former Marine, stepped forward from the crowd. He kept his rifle pointed at the ground, but his posture was confident. You know what is funny about Americans? We have a real problem with being told what to do, especially by folks who just showed up uninvited on our land. So here is a counteroffer. You get back in your fancy ships. You leave, and maybe, just maybe, we will talk to you through proper channels later. Sound good? Zorthak's patience snapped. He had never been insulted like this. He gave an order to his soldiers. Advance and detain that speaker. Show these primitives what happens when they refuse the Empire. The 20 Zalthari soldiers began moving forward in formation, their shields glowing brighter. That was when everything changed. In perfect unison, hundreds of rifles raised, not pointing directly at the aliens yet. But the message was unmistakable. Take one more step and this gets ugly. Vexnar grabbed Zorthak's arm hard. Stop this right now. You are about to start a war that we cannot win. For the first time, doubt crossed Zorthak's face. He looked at the humans. Really looked at them. There was no panic in their eyes. No fear, just determination. These were not frightened primitives. These were people who had come prepared. People who had made a choice to be here. The standoff began. Neither side moved. The desert was silent except for the wind and the hum of alien technology. And in that silence, both sides realized that nothing would ever be the same. 4 hours passed. The standoff in the Nevada desert continued. Neither the aliens nor the humans moved. The sun beat down on both groups. The temperature climbed above 100 degrees. But nobody left, more people kept arriving. By noon, there were over 1,000 armed civilians surrounding the alien ships. By afternoon, the number had grown to 3,000. They came from nearby towns and distant cities. Some drove for hours to be there. They brought food, water, and supplies. Someone even brought portable toilets. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting live video to the entire world. Billions of people watched on their televisions and phones. The whole planet knew what was happening in that Nevada desert. The United States military had arrived too. Fighter jets flew overhead. Tanks took up positions on nearby hills. Missile batteries were ready. But the military stayed back. They let the civilians hold the front line. It was a strange situation. Usually, the military protected civilians. But here, the civilians had gotten there first and established control. Inside the Zalthari flagship, the situation was tense. Zorthak paced back and forth in the command center. His confidence had completely disappeared. Vexnar and the other officers monitored the situation through screens and sensors. Krellix was tracking the global response. Fleet Commander, you need to see this. I am monitoring communications across the entire planet. Every nation knows we are here. Their militaries are mobilizing. Nuclear missiles are being prepared for launch. But more concerning is the civilian response. He brought up maps and data. In America, millions of people are preparing for possible conflict. Gun stores across the country report record sales. Shooting ranges are packed with people practicing. Online forums are coordinating defensive plans. And it is not just America. We are detecting similar responses in Canada, Australia, Switzerland, and dozens of other countries. Dalvara added her analysis. Fleet Commander, I have been studying their psychology and history. These humans have a phrase, live free or die. Throughout their history, they have proven they mean it. They fought a revolutionary war against impossible odds and won. They fought a civil war over the principle of freedom. They resisted tyranny in dozens of conflicts. They value freedom more than safety, more than comfort, sometimes even more than life itself. She showed footage from the landing site. Look at the people gathered there. Different ages, different backgrounds, different beliefs. In their daily lives, many of these humans disagree about politics, religion, and social issues. But today, they stand together. They are unified by one simple idea. Nobody takes their planet without permission. Zorthak stared at the displays. His pride was wounded. His career was built on successful conquests. He had never failed before. But our technology is superior. Our weapons are more powerful. Surely we can defeat them. Thornax, the military commander, had been running calculations. He spoke grimly. No, Fleet Commander, we cannot. Let me explain the mathematics. We have 4 ships and 3,000 soldiers. Earth has 330 million armed civilians in America alone, plus hundreds of millions more in other countries. They have 400 million weapons and trillions of rounds of ammunition. He brought up tactical displays. Yes, our weapons are better in direct combat. Our shields can stop their bullets. Our armor is strong. We could win every battle. But we cannot win the war. We cannot be everywhere at once. We cannot occupy every town, patrol every road, search every building. Even if we killed their military in the first strike, millions of armed civilians would remain. Thornax continued. I have studied their guerrilla warfare tactics. They are experts at this type of fighting. Small groups attacking supply lines, ambushes, hit-and-run tactics. They do not need to defeat us in big battles. They only need to make occupation impossible, and based on their history, they are very good at that. Krellix added more data. Our supply lines stretch halfway across the galaxy. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier must be transported from the Empire. But humans are already here. They have factories that produce millions of weapons annually. They have the raw materials. They have the knowledge. If we destroyed all their factories, individuals could make weapons in home workshops. The information is freely available on their internet. Silena spoke softly. Fleet Commander. Commander Vexnar was correct in his original assessment. This planet is fundamentally different from any we have encountered. On other worlds, we conquered the military and the population surrendered. But on Earth, the population is the military. Every citizen is a potential fighter. Every home is a potential fortress. The command center was silent. All the officers looked at Zorthak, waiting for his decision. The fleet commander looked old suddenly, tired. His dreams of adding Earth to his list of conquests were crumbling. Vexnar stepped forward. Fleet Commander, I recommend we change our approach completely. Withdraw all troops from the surface. Open diplomatic channels with Earth's governments. Approach them as potential partners, not subjects. These humans may be primitive in technology, but they are advanced in something more important. They understand freedom and are willing to fight for it. He gestured at the displays. Think about it. A planet where every citizen is armed and trained. That is not a weakness. That is a strength. If we make allies of these humans, they could help defend the Empire's borders. No enemy would want to invade a planet where every civilian might be carrying a weapon. Earth could be our greatest asset if we approach them correctly. Zorthak was quiet for a long time. Pride fought against pragmatism. His reputation versus reality. Finally, he made his decision. Recall all troops to the ships. Establish a communication channel with human governments at the highest level. Tell them we wish to discuss trade agreements and mutual defense pacts, not conquest, partnership. The officers moved quickly to implement the orders. Within minutes, the Zalthari soldiers began withdrawing to the ships. The humans watched them go but did not lower their weapons, not yet. They wanted to make sure the aliens were really leaving. Zorthak activated the communication systems. This time his message was different. People of Earth, we apologize for our aggressive approach. The Zalthari Empire wishes to open diplomatic relations with your world. We come in peace and respect your sovereignty. We ask that your leaders contact us to discuss possibilities for trade and cooperation. The humans in the desert looked at each other. Some seemed satisfied, others remained suspicious. But slowly, very slowly, the weapons began to lower. Not put away, just lowered. The message was clear. We are listening, but we are still ready. Over the next 2 weeks, real negotiations began. The United Nations assembled a team to speak with the Zalthari. Terms were discussed. Trade routes were proposed. Technology exchanges were considered. But through it all, one thing remained certain. Earth would keep its independence. Earth would keep its sovereignty. And Earth would definitely keep its guns. Eventually, a treaty was signed. The Zalthari Empire gained access to Earth's markets, resources, and surprisingly, military cooperation. It turned out that humans made excellent soldiers. Their experience with weapons, their tactical knowledge, and their unwillingness to surrender made them valuable allies. For Earth, the benefits were clear. Access to advanced alien technology, faster than light travel, medical advances, clean energy, but more importantly, respect. The galaxy now knew that humans could not be pushed around. Earth was different, special, a planet where freedom meant everything. Commander Vexnar was promoted for his accurate assessment and wise counsel. In his final report, he wrote a message that would be studied by diplomats across the Empire for generations. The humans taught us an important lesson. Strength is not just about technology or weapons. True strength comes from the spirit of a people. Earth's greatest defense is not their firearms. It is the fact that every citizen, from the youngest to the oldest, believes in freedom and will fight to protect it. They have shown us that a population willing to defend its rights cannot be conquered, no matter how primitive their weapons might seem. Back in Nevada, life returned to normal. Jake went back to his ranch. Ryan returned to his construction work. Nicole, Steve, Danny, Beth, and Laura all returned to their regular jobs. But they kept their weapons cleaned and ready, just in case, because that was the way they lived, prepared, independent, free. News of Earth spread through the galaxy quickly. Other alien civilizations heard the story, how a primitive planet faced down a powerful empire, How civilians with simple weapons stood their ground against advanced technology. How humans refused to surrender their freedom. Earth became known across the stars, not as a weak planet ripe for conquest, but as a world that valued freedom above all else. A planet where every citizen was a guardian, where the government served the people, not the other way around, where the right to defend oneself was considered sacred. And so, humanity took its first steps into the galactic community, not as subjects, not as conquered people, but as equals, as partners, as free people who had proven they would fight for their rights. The aliens had scanned Earth expecting to find another easy target. Instead, they something they had never encountered before. A population that refused to be victims. A culture built on liberty and self-reliance. A people who understood that freedom. 6 months after the Nevada standoff, Earth had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. The Zalthari Empire kept its word. Trade routes opened. Alien technology began flowing to Earth. Human goods and resources went to other worlds. But the relationship was careful, respectful. The aliens had learned their lesson. Commander Vexnar became the official liaison between Earth and the Zalthari Empire. He spent much of his time on Earth, learning about human culture. He visited different countries. He talked to regular people. He tried to understand what made humans so different from every other species he had encountered. One day he visited Jake's ranch in Nevada. The rancher had become somewhat famous after the standoff. News organizations had interviewed him. People called him a hero, but Jake just laughed at the attention. He was still the same person, living the same life, doing the same work. Vexnar sat on the porch with Jake, drinking something called sweet tea. The ranch stretched out before them, peaceful and quiet. Cattle grazed in the distance. The sky was clear and blue. "I have a question," Vexnar said. "When you saw our ships landing that day, were you afraid?" Jake thought about it for a moment. "Sure, I was a little scared. You folks had spaceships and technology we could not even understand. But fear does not mean I was going to just let you take over without saying something about it. But you knew your weapons could not damage our ships," Vexnar said. Jake smiled. "That was never the point. The point was to show up. To be counted. To let you know that if you wanted to take our freedom, you would have to go through us first. Maybe we would lose. Probably we would lose. But at least we would go down fighting. That is what matters." Vexnar nodded slowly. "On my world, and on most worlds we have visited, people wait for their government to protect them. They rely on their military. But here you protect yourselves." "That is right," Jake said. "Do not get me wrong. We love our military. We support them completely. But we also understand that government cannot protect everyone everywhere all the time. And more importantly, we do not think they should. We are responsible for our own safety, our own freedom. That is the American way." Vexnar spent time with other humans too. He met Ryan, the former Marine, who explained military tactics and guerrilla warfare. He met Nicole, who talked about why she learned to shoot despite living in a safe neighborhood. He met Beth, the nurse, who explained how she could save lives but also protect herself if needed. Each person had a slightly different reason for owning weapons, but the underlying philosophy was the same: personal responsibility, self-reliance, the refusal to be a victim, the determination to protect what mattered most: family, home, freedom. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other alien civilizations watched Earth with great interest. Some were curious, some were impressed, some were worried. A few aggressive empires that had been planning to visit Earth changed their minds. The reputation of armed humans spread quickly. The Karathi, a warrior race that had conquered dozens of worlds, sent scouts to observe Earth. They watched for 3 months. They analyzed human military capabilities. They studied the civilian population. Their conclusion was simple: not worth the cost. The Karathi were willing to fight hard battles, but they preferred battles they could actually win. Occupying Earth would be a nightmare. Other peaceful civilizations started making trade deals with Earth. They wanted human goods, human culture, and surprisingly, human security services. It turned out that hiring human security forces was very effective. Pirates and criminals avoided ships protected by humans. The reputation alone was enough to deter most threats. The Zalthari High Command officially changed their first contact protocols. New rules were added. Before approaching any planet, scan for civilian weapons distribution. If the population is armed at Earth levels, approach diplomatically only. Do not attempt conquest. The cost is too high. Earth became a member of the Galactic Trade Federation within a year. Humans served on security councils. Human military advisors helped other worlds develop defense strategies. Human culture, music, and art spread to distant planets. But Earth never joined any empire, never surrendered sovereignty, never gave up the principles that made them unique. Back on Earth, life continued mostly as before. People went to work. Children went to school. Families had dinners together. The alien technology made some things easier. Medical treatments improved. Energy became cleaner and cheaper. Transportation got faster. But the fundamental culture remained the same. Gun stores still operated on every corner in many towns. Shooting ranges remained popular. Families still taught their children how to handle weapons safely and responsibly. The Second Amendment was still protected and cherished. Because humans understood something important. The galaxy was bigger and more dangerous than they had imagined. Having an armed population was not paranoia. It was wisdom. Vexnar eventually wrote a book about his experiences with humans. It became required reading in the Zalthari Military Academy. The book explained not just what happened, but why it happened. It explored human psychology, history, and culture. It taught young Zalthari officers to respect different approaches to freedom and security. The final chapter of his book contained a warning and a lesson. The warning was simple. Never underestimate a population that values freedom above safety. Never assume that primitive weapons mean a weak civilization. Never believe that superior technology guarantees victory. The lesson was more profound. True civilization is not measured by technology alone. It is measured by how much a society values individual liberty, by how much citizens are willing to sacrifice for freedom, by whether people see themselves as subjects to be ruled or as free individuals with rights worth defending. Vexnar wrote that humans had taught the galaxy something it had forgotten. That power comes not just from governments or militaries, but from individual citizens who refuse to be helpless. That a society where every person can defend themselves is stronger than a society where only a few have that power. That weapons in the hands of responsible citizens are not a threat to peace, but a guarantee of it. 10 years after first contact, Earth had become a galactic power. Not through conquest, not through aggression, but through reputation. Other worlds knew that humans were tough. Fair but tough. They made good trading partners. They made loyal allies. But they made terrible enemies. Because humans did not give up. They did not surrender. They fought for what they believed in. Jake still lived on his ranch. He was older now, but still strong. He still carried a rifle in his truck. Still kept weapons locked safely in his home. His grandchildren visited often. He taught them the same lessons his grandfather had taught him. How to shoot safely. How to respect weapons. How to take responsibility for their own protection. How to value freedom above all else. One evening, as the sun set over his ranch, Jake sat on his porch with his granddaughter. She was 12 years old and had just completed her first shooting course. She had learned well and was proud of her accomplishment. "Grandpa," she asked, "do you think the aliens will ever come back and try to take over?" Jake smiled and looked at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Maybe. The universe is a big place. There might be others out there who do not understand us yet. But if they come, they will learn the same lesson the Zalthari learned. Americans do not surrender. We do not give up our freedom. And we definitely do not give up our guns." His granddaughter nodded seriously. She understood. It was not about being violent or aggressive. It was about being prepared. About taking responsibility. About refusing to be helpless in a dangerous universe. Across America, across Earth, millions of people lived by the same principle. They were teachers, doctors, farmers, mechanics, office workers. They were peaceful people living peaceful lives. But they were also ready to defend their homes, ready to protect their families, ready to stand up for their rights. The aliens had scanned Earth expecting to find weakness. Instead, they found strength. Not the strength of advanced weapons or powerful militaries, though Earth had those too, but the strength that comes from a free people who understand that liberty must be protected by those who cherish it. In the end, the story of Earth and the Zalthari Empire became legend across the galaxy. It was told as a cautionary tale to aggressive civilizations. It was studied as an example by peaceful societies. It was debated in academic circles and military academies. But for humans, it was not a story. It was simply life, the way things were, the way things had always been, and the way things would always be. Because freedom was not something granted by government or protected only by soldiers. Freedom was something every citizen carried with them, sometimes literally. The galaxy learned to respect Earth, not because humans were the strongest, not because they had the best technology, but because they had something more important, the will to remain free, and the means to defend that freedom. And so humanity moved forward into the stars, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as free people, armed, ready, independent, just the way they liked it.